Have you ever walked into the gym or the fitness center and wondered which weight is right for me? Well, in today's video, I want to share with you exactly how to pick your correct dumbbells so that you can go to the gym confident in picking the right weight to reach your goals, and also so you don't have to worry about getting hurt along the way, because neither one of those is a good alternative. So let's get started. What's up, mamas? Alexandria here, 35-year-old toddler mom. I'm also a licensed therapist for over 10 years and a self-professed gym rat. And after losing over 40 pounds naturally and in a healthy way, with a lot of help from strength training, I feel like I finally cracked the code on weight loss and healthy living. And so now my goal is to help other mamas and other women to achieve their goals in the fastest and hopefully most user-friendly way possible. So if you love it here, please make sure that you subscribe and come and join the family. And if you love this video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up. That just lets YouTube know that this is useful or helpful, so we can send it out to other strength train lovers like ourselves. So let's get started. So the first thing that we need to understand when we're deciding which weight we're going to choose is what kind of muscle group are we going to target. So we can either target larger muscles or smaller muscles. So your larger muscle groups are going to be things like your legs and your glutes and your back, as opposed to smaller muscles like your biceps, your triceps, and the muscles around your shoulder. And those are very much going to determine which weight you're going to choose. So you're likely not going to choose the exact same weight for your lower body that you would for your upper body, unless you're choosing for your back. So let's start with the lower body, and I'm going to demonstrate for you what this looks like, and then we'll move on to talking about what it would look like in the upper body. So when you're thinking about choosing weight, you want to focus on form first. So let's take, for instance, a traditional squat. You want to consider what is a squat form before I add the weight. So when we're thinking about squat, we want to make sure that we are nice and tucked and tight, and our core is braced like somebody's got to punch us. And we're going to squat, check our knee form, and push back up, right? Push back up. We're going to make sure our core is nice and tight. So down and squeeze up. Again, focus on your breathing as well. Down, in, out, right? So we have our proper form squat. And as you see here, I have a mirror, which is a great way to check your form as you're going. So I highly recommend having a mirror around when you're trying to do this. So I'm going to demonstrate with a lighter weight first. So I'm going to grab my 8s here for demonstration purposes, because I'm aware that these are too light for me, but I just want to show you. So I'm going to rack them up here. That's just my preferred, way to rack the weights when I'm doing things like a squat or a lunge. So again, I'm going to do that same movement. But this feels easy, right? I don't feel much of a challenge, right? And that's how I know that these weights are too light for me, because, I'm here 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 reps, and I'm not really feeling all that tired, okay? And in a perfect world, you would want to choose a weight where by about rep 6 to 8, you're actually feeling the burn and you're actually getting to a place of fatigue, because you don't want to waste reps and sets not building muscle. So we've looked at our 8s, and I've decided, yes, this feels too light for that 6 to 8 rep range. So I'm going to go up in weight. Now, I would likely go up only a few pounds at a time, maybe even just 1 pound at a time. But for the purposes of the video and for time, I'm going to go ahead and pick up my 30-pound weights, which is what I would typically use for a squat. So again, I'm going to rack them, and I'm going to use them to practice my squat. And as you can see, my form is still correct, but you can likely tell by how I'm performing the squat that it's much more difficult for me to do. I can definitely feel it in my quads. And that is what we want when we're doing that. So let's say, for example, I've got some 35s here also. So let me just demonstrate what likely too heavy would look like. All right. So at this point, you see my form is no longer safe, right? I can do it, but I'm really struggling. So we know that by rep 6 to 8, as you can see, I'm very winded. By rep 6 to 8, I'm really going to be super fatigued. And honestly, I probably can't get to 6 or 8 reps. So that is likely too heavy a weight for me to be choosing at this time. Give me a second. I took a minute for a breather so I can actually talk to you. That's one of the challenges of doing this for yourself and instructing at the same time. So when I use the 35s, you could probably tell that my form drastically went down in my ability to produce proper form. And so that's a good indicator to me that that is too heavy. So think about that as you're sort of moving through the movements. Form first. Now let's talk a little bit about what might we do on upper body situation. It's going to look pretty similar for your back as well. You want to, again, focus on proper form, and you're likely going to be able to lift a little heavier. But when we're talking about those smaller upper body muscles, what does that look like? So I'm going to demonstrate that for you as well. I'm going to start with my 8s again. I don't really have a good rationale for why, but let's just start with, let's say, a bicep curl. Okay? So as you can probably tell, this feels okay. This feels not too easy, but it doesn't feel super challenging either. And if I spent, time isolating, I can tell that this one doesn't feel as heavy, right? I could use this weight, but I wonder if I could go up. So this might be a question of, well, can I go up? I know that I can, and so I'm going to grab my 15s. Again, this is a weight that I would typically choose, and sometimes I might even go up slightly higher depending on the time under tension, and we'll talk about that in a second. So in this case, the bicep curl is here, but you could probably tell that as I'm doing this bicep curl, that it's challenging for me, right? But I'm still able to maintain my form. I'm still able to keep a nice, slow, and controlled, right? When you're thinking especially about like upper body movements, are you having to like jerk up the weight or things like that? Because if you are, then that is likely an indicator that your form is failing and it's too heavy. There certainly is a time for momentum, and there certainly is a time for like a momentum curl or a push press or things like that. But in those cases, that would be programmed ahead of time for you. But as a general rule, you're wanting slow and controlled, right? In the case of upper body movements, nice, slow, and controlled. If you're having to whip your arm around or things like that, that's probably an indicator that you should back off in weight. When you're thinking about lower body, there's a pretty good chance that you'll be able to go up in weight at a faster pace than if you're going up in weight with your smaller muscle groups and your upper body. For example, a shoulder press, you likely wouldn't go from using 5-pound weights to 10-pound weights. You would probably go up from 5 pounds to 7 pounds to 9 pounds to 12 pounds, things like that. A great way to do that is to grab some of these. These are ankle weights. I put them on my arms though, in order to add weight, and you can get these up to like 2.5, 3. I believe these are 2.5s here. And so I've just added 5 pounds total to my weight, 2.5 on each side. And that's much more reasonable of an expectation for what you can expect to go up in weight. So how do you know when it's time to move up in weight? Well, it's time to move up in weight when you are getting to that 6 to 8 rep range and the lifts are getting too easy. Like you can just keep going, like the Energizer Bunny of sorts, right? When you know that you can keep going 6, 8, 10, 12, like the higher and higher the rep range, you're likely at a point where you should be moving up in weight, because the goal of all of this, regardless of which rep range you choose, from what I've been reading, it seems like there's no like one specific rep range you need. The goal is hypertrophy. The goal is to push to that 2 to 3 reps close to failure. And once you've gotten to there, that's when you're actually tearing down and rebuilding the muscles. So what does that look like, right? So let's say, for example, I'm going to be a little bit exaggeratory here, but once your bicep curls start to look like this, right? You can tell, again, a little bit exaggerated here, but I'm getting close to failure, right? And that's what you're wanting muscles to look like on those last few reps. That's how you know that you're getting close to failure, is when you cannot do any more reps, or you're getting close to not being able to do any more reps. And it'll get easier and it'll get better with time for figuring out what that looks like as you get more practice with this. The other thing I want to quickly touch base on is like, well, Alexandria, you talked about lower body, you talked about upper body. What about full body? And this is one of the sort of challenges with doing full body workouts and full body movements, like let's say a squat to press, is that in order to find the right weight for full body movement, you do have to choose a weight that you're going to be able to sustain with those upper body muscles. So for example, I'm likely to choose a 15-pound weight, maybe 20, depending on what the movement is, but I'm much more likely to pick a 15-pound weight because I know that 30 pounds is not reasonable for me to practice upper body, right? Like if I were to try to do a bicep curl with a 30-pound weight, I don't even know if I can do it. I can't do it because I know that's not an appropriate weight. So hopefully like giving you guys a little bit of a demonstration is helpful for you in serving your purpose. So remember, form first. Go up in small increments to make sure that you're not lifting too heavy, and focus on getting to those like 6 to 8 reps when you're really starting to feel the burn. And if you're not, then it's probably time to push up the weight. The other thing that you can think about doing if you only have a certain number of weights at your disposal, let's say you're like me and you work out at home, you can also push up the rep range to get close to failure. So let's say you've only got a pair of 8s, but you know and can tell that you're getting to a place where it's easier or not as difficult to, move the weight. Then go up in reps until you have access to some other weights. That's also another way to push to failure. When you're thinking about rep ranges, you're looking at like smaller numbers for strength and power. You're looking at that like 10 to 12 rep range up to 15 for hypertrophy. And then beyond that is really more about like muscular endurance. Let's take, for example, YouTube video workouts, because I feel like a lot of times those are less rep range and more timer based. Like I know a lot of Caroline's workouts are timer based. Sydney, a lot of the YouTube workouts that I've done are timer based. So when you're thinking about a timer base, you're going to want to choose your weight based on the time under tension, right? Or how long is the clock? Because if the time under tension is 30 seconds, that's obviously going to be less reps per set as opposed to a 1-minute timer or a complex where you've got 3 minutes, right? That's much more muscular endurance focused. And so you're going to want to choose a lighter weight for a longer timer. I think that makes sense, but just in case it doesn't, if you're in a situation where the timer is on for 30 seconds, the whole idea is to be able to pick a weight that you're going to be able to last at least most of that 30 seconds and, get as close to the end of that 30 seconds as possible. That's sort of the whole premise and notion. So I hope this video has served to be useful and helpful to you. And if it was, again, I would love if you give this video a thumbs up. It just lets you know it's useful and helpful. And until next time, bye friends.